speak now to Roger Casale, who's a former UK Labour MP and now chair of the Europe's People's Forum. Really good to speak to you, Roger. First of all, I was just wondering how you're feeling as a former Labour MP on the eve of this, what could be a historic election, not just for Labour, but for the UK.
Excited, and of course it does bring back for me many memories of 1997 when I won Wimbledon for Labour, and people will be looking at what's happening at Wimbledon this time. They weren't doing that in 1997. Funnily enough, it might turn Lib Dem from Conservatives rather than Labour. But I think you're right, Paul, as well, that that feeling of things can only get better is not there. People want to change. They desperately want to change. But I think they're perhaps less optimistic about what that change might be. They still want it.
Yeah, and this is a confluence of different factors. People are asking why potentially could there be a majority of 318. It doesn't say as much about the popularity of the Labour Party and Sir Keir Starmer. It says more about dissatisfaction with the incumbent government, which all incumbent governments face. Also the emergence of reform on the right of UK politics splitting the vote, and then of course the collapse of the dominant political force in Scotland, the SNP, because of allegations of financial corruption. It's a kind of a confluence of a perfect storm bringing about this potential majority if the polls are correct.
Yes, that's right, Paul. The Labour position hasn't changed that much, but the Conservative vote has taken a nosedive. And that's partly to do with the insurgency of reform, I think. And but I would also say that people, it seems to me, made up their minds a long time ago that they didn't want this Conservative government anymore. When you lose trust in politics, it's very difficult to get it back. And so I think people have firmly decided a long time ago that they're not going to want Tories anymore. And whether they're particularly enthusiastic and enamoured of Labour or not, Labour is the opposition. Labour is what is offering a choice and change, and therefore a lot of people are going to vote Labour. But as you say, that result will be amplified by the insurgency of other parties and the collapse of the SNP in Scotland. So it's an unusual situation.
Yeah, and you said it feels a little bit like 1997. Are you feeling optimistic, given the huge fundamental challenges that the UK is facing, and the fact that the Labour Party, if it wants to push through that change, it's going to stick to the same financial rules that the Conservative Party have governed under, and in that case, it's banking everything on the economy growing, and if it can't, how is it? It's going to have to break those rules and break those promises.
Yeah, well, you're asking me a personal question, and the answer is yes, I do feel optimistic, but I always feel optimistic. You don't stand for a seat like Wimbledon for Labour in 97 that you feel optimistic. But optimism can be contagious. It can actually lift the mood of the country. I think it's a very different task to govern the country to winning the election. And I think Keir Starmer has been right to keep expectations low, because you don't want to artificially raise people's expectations only to dash them. What I'm optimistic about from a political point of view is this, Paul. I think from Friday, you will have a government that is focused on governing Britain, on doing its best to actually deliver the public services, sort out the problems, and won't be distracted by that, by its own interests or its own faction infighting and all of the things that we've seen going on over the last few years. I think people want to have a government that is serious about governing the country and that is credible in terms of its ambition being to really do the job. It's a tough job, it's a tough ask, and I don't think we'll see results straight away. But we will have a government that is focused on governing, and that's certainly a big step in the right direction.
Yeah, part of the Conservative Party messaging in these final hours of the campaign appears to be to voters, listen, we can't have such a large Labour majority because a governing Labour Party wouldn't be properly scrutinised by the opposition. And indeed, I'm told that less than 100 MPs in opposition would make it difficult for the official opposition to perform its duties. That wouldn't be a good thing for democracy in the UK necessarily, would it?
I think people can see through that tactic. People want to hear what the Conservatives have to offer themselves that could encourage them to vote for the Conservatives. And I don't think people can see that. As I said, I think people decided a long time ago that they didn't want the Conservatives in government anymore. And, the day before the election saying we're going to we've lost and we're going to be beaten badly. It's a political ruse, and I think people will see through it.
Yeah. Listen, Roger, it's going to be a fascinating night. I don't know how you're spending it, but really appreciate you speaking to us. Thank you so much, Roger Casale there, former UK Labour MP.